we're live. You're tuning into the Cosmic Children podcast. I'm your host, Kevin. And today I have Christy from The Slow Press in the studio with me. So, to kickstart the conversation, Christy, could you please introduce yourself? And could you please describe what is The Slow Press?
Hi everyone, I'm Christy. I'm the founder and editorial director of The Slow Press. So The Slow Press is a magazine first and foremost. At the heart of it all, we are a food magazine. And I say magazine in very loose terms because I don't see it as just a print product. I see it as what we try to shape as a community. So we like to plan events. We also like to make the magazine, of course, and also do a lot more of like social media content so that people can regularly engage with us and share a bit more about our lives as like novices in the kitchen and whatever we learn on a daily basis.
Yep. So while doing my research for this particular episode, one question kind of strikes out to me. So why a magazine? Why that particular output initially?
I think this is the time period that everyone's like getting into this indie scene and everything.
Indie.
And yeah, I mean, people just say it's indie thing to do to run a magazine. I wasn't really swayed by that. So what I started doing was I was writing this small newsletter. I think it was like a circuit breaker thing where everyone was like making their own like mailing lists. Yep. And I sent out some of like the recipes I tested out at home to my friends. So it was a very small thing, but it grew a bit larger after like circuit breaker. And then I was friends with like a few people who wanted to run a magazine and like not really specific to food or something, but we found out that everyone likes food a lot. Everyone cooks a lot and likes to read about food. So that's why we started The Slow Press. I wasn't really very familiar with like print as a medium. So that's why I have Ike on the team who helps me out. Like he tells me what kind of magazines are like in style these days and like how I should like formulate a magazine from start to end. Yep. So I think that's why we started a magazine.
Yeah. You mentioned you have very little experience with regards to print and publication and magazines.
Right.
Okay.
So like, I guess little experience as in I didn't really grow up reading magazines. I've always seen magazines as like something that like people look to for like fashion trends and not really like a journalism output. Yep. So for me, my background runs more of like digital journalism, I feel. And I like long form content a lot. So I consume a lot of Rise Media, I guess, in the past few years. I really like their stories and how in-depth they are. So I guess more of like what I aspire to do is like stories about Singapore people. And it wasn't really limited to food, but like food was something that I discovered along the years as I worked in like a bit of F&B, a bit of like service, and like food just brings everyone together in general.
So I'm curious to know, what is your definition of journalism?
That's such a broad question, but sure. Journalism, I feel it's like telling stories of people. It's really not limited to anything, but to me, like what I look out for in journalism isn't very, I don't like things that are like on the surface. Like if you're telling me to go to this place to eat a certain thing, I feel like it's not the kind of journalism I like to consume. Because I prefer to like form my own opinions of like this hawker center. I don't want people to tell me like top 10 stores to like visit. And that really sucks for the owners, honestly. Like people just go for the more famous stalls that are in food blogs. So I don't really count that as like journalism because I feel like it might be a bit biased because the person writing it is not going to try out like every single store at the hawker center.
Yeah, they can't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what my definition of journalism is when you go down and like you interview people, you formulate like your own opinions and they still have to represent the masses at some point because like you can't just write about yourself like unless you are really the top tier like super famous journalist. No one's gonna like buy your stuff. Yeah, so I feel like you still have to cater to what people think, but you should present something that's quite unique and refreshing to them in order to like stand out.
It's interesting because journalism is just what you described, but when I put food journalism together, I can't seem to draw any images. So could you please describe what does it mean to do a compelling article, to do a compelling piece or a story with regards to food journalism? How has that process changed as you have ran the Slow Press across the years?
Right. So I think when I first started, I read a lot of like food reviews. They were a big thing in Singapore. But because I didn't really see that as journalism, I got in touch with like stories of like hawkers when I had to write up like normal journalism stories for school.
Yep.
So we could interview like people at the wet market and ask them about like, oh, this is your livelihood. Then what time do you wake up to go to like the fishery and like get your fresh fish? And people would tell us like, oh, we wake up at like 2 a.m. but we go to sleep at like 4 p.m. so we get enough rest. Yeah, so when they share these kind of stories with us, we are like, oh, it's actually like food related. And it tells a lot about like how these people live their lives because their lives are like built upon food.
Yep.
So that's how like food journalism kind of like got pieced together for me.
Yep.
And I feel like it's not really just describing like the taste of food because everyone has their own like subjective opinions of food. And like if you have never tasted this thing before, it's quite hard to like describe it in a way that's like familiar to someone. But I think it's also about like talking about the food culture in Singapore. Which is like, there's so much to talk about. And that's why like, I feel like we'll never run out of things to talk about when we're doing food journalism.
Yep.
And my ideal story would look like interviewing somebody who maybe like runs this independent business or like maybe a family business, or even if just like people that cook at home, they're cooking like their grandmother's recipes, but they're like maybe like a 18-year-old who's still like preserving these traditions. And like there's so many small facets in like this whole big society that people don't see.
Yep.
Yeah, because I think to a lot of people, food is just like something that they need to like get past the day. And more often than not, which is a bit sad, we usually just like go past our meals. Like they don't really pay attention to it because
we don't
we're
think
so
about
busy.
it as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we have like meals between work, it's always like, oh, I'm just going to get like the cheapest or most convenient option available.
Yep.
So I guess we have to appreciate food outside those meals that we cannot skip. Yeah.
I want to put a pin on food culture, but I want to go back to what you said about approaching, let's say, these restaurateurs, these chefs, and these people when they, let's say, go and get their ingredients and everything. When you go to the wet market and you speak to people, what has the reaction been when you're going to, let's say, the wet market and you're talking to the vendors and everything? Were they surprised that people are even interested, or was it just a regular day? Yeah. What was the reaction been?
I think it started off being quite intimidating for me. Okay. When I was doing journalism in school, there was this module where we were placed at Tang Lin Hout, which is like the neighborhood that has a lot of en-bloc flats already.
Yep.
And because that neighborhood was kind of perishing in a way, hawkers were already moving out.
Perishing. Interesting choice of words. Okay.
Because like food perishes. So I think they got to me.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah. So we were like tasked to like, oh, we have to speak to at least 5 people. That was our first time there. And everyone just looked at each other because we're like second year students. And we're like, oh no, how are we going to do this? Right.
Yep.
But one of us had to do it because we were all in like small groups and like just went out to the auntie and be like, hello auntie, 你在这里 like 几年了? Like how long have you been running this store? And sometimes it surprises us when they're like, like 20, 30 years.
That's
and
insane.
Then they look like they're just like 40 or 50, right? And then sometimes they are a bit like, don't disturb me kind of attitude. And like, we have to look past that and we have to always see that like, we are befriending these people first because we're not that far off from them. Like maybe we didn't grow up in the same kind of family, but they are all like the same as us and we're all like Singaporeans. So like they won't bite. And
they won't bite, gotcha.
When we go up to them, it's always like you just have an open-minded mindset. If they look like they're not very receptive, maybe they're just like busy. But most people are like surprised when like I go up to them or like people my age go up to them because they don't usually talk to people like in this demographic, I guess, other than their like grandchildren. And like, I think they're mostly happy that there are people interested in their craft, in what they are trying to like prolong or preserve. Yeah.
So with regards to that particular project, being at Tang Lin, speaking to all these people, what stood out to you even back then?
I think people have this like very peculiar glance when they see like young people at the wet market or the hawker center carrying cameras.
It's pretty odd, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, school project again. Then like keep getting this kind of like reaction. And I feel a bit like, I mean, it is a school project, but I really want to appreciate in detail. So when like the Stove Press started, I didn't have to say it's a school project anymore. I just say, I want to do it myself. I'm interested in learning more about this kind of food. So like, I mean, it's still very scary for me sometimes.
Scary, okay.
When I try to challenge myself by going to like new markets, Because those that I'm familiar with is like some of them recognize me because I'm like the only young girl that's not like with parents or anything going to the market. So I try to like step off my comfort zone sometimes. And I just like stand at the store for a bit too long. Then they'll just be like, what do you want? And I'm like, oh, actually, I want to talk to you, but I don't really know how to do it. Then I just like pick up something and I just ask.
You feel
like,
obliged to buy something?
I try to go to stores that I can actually buy something. You know, I won't like look at fish for too long. I'm like, I don't even know what fishes these are. So like, I think starting with like vegetable stores is more manageable. Then I think the easiest question you can ask is just like, how do you cook this vegetable? Or like, what is this used for? Like, can you cook soup with it? Then people start to open up a bit more. They're like, oh, you want to cook? Like, you know how to cook? Or like, are you buying it for your mother? Like, I can help you choose. So it's quite interesting. Then they will like teach me how to choose certain vegetables. Or like, sometimes before I leave, I'll just be like, oh, can I get some spring onions? And they just throw in a bunch for free. That's cool. Which is like amazing. But they're like so supportive, which is very nice. Yeah.
So before, let's say, this particular school project and placing you in an environment where I guess you have to take an initiative to start talking to people in the wet market, which has its own rules and regulation, and there's a very certain type of flow to it. Have you been to the wet market before, let's say with your parents, and observed and seen them, let's say, buy certain things and stuff like that? Were you like a frequent, patron of it before?
No, I was never actually. Okay. So that particular school project made me like see the world in a different light, and also like it
Plus
really
one for
did.
School, man.
The only thing I took away. Oh no.
Yeah, that's fair.
But before this school project, I never really needed to do anything for myself. It's like I haven't really stepped into the world of journalism yet. I knew I like writing and like I like food, but this was like maybe 3 years ago. So that was before I actually like was very invested in like cooking and anything. That was before COVID actually. So I only started cooking a lot more during COVID. My parents don't really go to the market. They frequent NTUC a lot more because it's like they can go any time of the day. They just like pick stuff up after work. It's still fresh. So nobody actually mentioned about like going to the market to me. Do you think that there's a discrepancy between, let's say, the convenience that, let's say, supermarkets bring and what the wet markets provide and bring? There are a lot of like different pros and cons, honestly. Like for me, the biggest merit of the wet market is that you can choose whatever quantity you want. So you can just pick up like 1 clove of garlic or like 1 chili, and then the auntie will just not count you for that. You just be like, 这个不用算. Like she can't even count. Like what's she gonna charge you? Like she can't charge you 10 cents for chili. It's not fair. But at like the supermarket, you are forced to buy like a bag of 30 chili buddies. And I'm like, how do I even finish that? But people will argue and say like, oh, you can just freeze it. But then again, like if I can afford to have time to go to the market like once a week, it's also very therapeutic to me. And I rather get, like it's chaos, but like a beautiful kind of chaos. I rather get fresh ingredients weekly, and I get to see like what's new and like what's not around. So it's kind of like testing me, like testing my recipe skills. Sometimes I plan to like, I really, really want to make avocado toast, but because it's like an imported product, you don't really have it on some weeks. So it's like, oh damn, I can't make it anymore. I think one of the interesting things about, I guess, the convenience that supermarkets bring is that every time when we go there, or every time, at least when I go there, I expect to see, the chickens, the poultry, the pork and everything, but and certain fruits are there. They're always there. There's always the expectation that I go there, it's going to be there, it's going to be this particular price. But if you go to like the wet market, that might not be the case. Like because you go there because of seasonal stuff, importing, exporting. So that's a very interesting thought to even hold, because we are so conditioned that, we go there, you have this mangoes for like $4.20 at NTUC, but that's not always the case. And everything's like packaged nicely, and it's not too expensive as well. Like of course it's like for the people, and like everything is just there for you. So visually it's very different as well.
So going back to that pin about food culture, so I have to ask, do we have a food culture in Singapore?
I'm very sure we do.
Okay.
People come to Singapore and call it a food paradise.
Okay.
I mean, they're not wrong because we have so many different cultures coexisting in the same place. It's quite amazing how we like don't go to war with each other. But then again, there's so many stories about like different businesses fighting for like, oh, I invented this dish, and there's like the Victory restaurant thing and the guy almost went to jail. Yeah. So there's like so much politics within food, but we don't really see it, but it just exists. Like, why must we go all the way to like Little India to enjoy the best Indian food? And like people just don't like, I think they don't really feel very comfortable to like set up a restaurant and like a random neighborhood. They're like, I'm more comfortable in like Little India because like everyone is there. Like, everyone that can appreciate my culture to the fullest is there. Yeah, I think there's like so many like existing things and so many different forces at play when it comes to like food culture. But I guess to people who don't think like too far about food, like if they're just looking for something good, it's everywhere. And it's also kind of a culture where everyone just rushes to like the newest cafe that opens, or like maybe some other overseas outlet like Shake Shack came to Singapore. People queue forever, and that's also a part of culture. No matter if it's good or bad, or like, but people are doing it. So I think that's very interesting to observe as well.
So before we move on to that, I'm curious to know what particular food culture or what types of food did you grow up with? Was it cooking at home? Was it going out?
I grew up eating mostly my grandparents' food. So half Hokkien and half Cantonese, and they mostly just cook like regular Chinese dishes. So, last time when I was younger, I really hated eating like bean sprouts. So it was something that I would pick out of like bee hoon, and I just naturally avoided bee hoon for most of my life until I was like maybe 20 years old. You know, when people buy like bee hoon for breakfast, I hate bee hoon just because of the bean sprouts, and I hated char kway teow as well
because of the bean sprouts,
and laksa as well. So I hated a lot of what people would call like Singaporean food. So I didn't really grow up with that kind of food. And at home, I really hated eating like things that are so flavorful, and I only realized that when maybe I was in like JC. Which was such a waste, but I'm happy that I figured it out like finally. I don't know what happened to me, but it happened. So last time I used to grow up on like rice with like frozen fish fingers. Like that was something I wrote about in volume 3 or 4 in the editor's note.
Fish fingers are the like the nuggets of like fish, right?
Yes, like the frozen food. So I just ate a lot of like fried nuggets and like fish fingers when I grew up with rice with a fried egg. And I was just like very averse to like eating like braised meats and that kind of stuff. It always seemed like too funky for me. But my grandmother used to make the best like braised pork sandwiches, you know, like the steam bun kind of
Kong ba bao.
Kong ba bao, yes, that's the word. Yeah, but I've never eaten it at all, so I just eat the plain bun with the soya sauce.
Oh my god.
And me running a food magazine like 10 years later, how ironic. Yeah. So that's me.
Do you cook?
Yes, so I started cooking after JC times because I had like a 8-month break before university started. I think I was a bit bored, and also because I'm the only child at home. And that means that I have a lot of time at home, and like, you mean I'm just going to eat the same thing from my neighborhood every single day? And I've never been around in my neighborhood, you know, because like I spent so much of my time in school from like secondary school to JC. I spent 5 days a week, like long days in school. And we never ate anything outside of the canteen because like pocket money was limited, and we just ate like McDonald's if we had the chance to.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that period was just like, since people are like providing recipes online, right? I can just search up like anything I want to eat. And why don't I just try making it at home? So the first few things I tried to make was like scrambled eggs. Because it's literally like no ingredients, just like eggs, butter, salt and pepper, and like can eat it with bread or just eat it on its own. So I think like I spent a good 6 months trying to like make the best version of scrambled eggs, and I watched so many like Bon Appetit videos and like different chefs trying to cook scrambled eggs. I'm like, ooh, how is it even different? Like, yeah, I think that fascinated me a lot. Like media, especially like YouTube, being a platform for like all these like munchies videos, and also like worth it. Yeah. So that was very interesting, and like I think I was just naturally curious to like buy things from the supermarket. It always seemed like a very adult thing to do, you know.
It is.
Go there and like buy some fruits, then like you hit to the cashier and you're like, oh, you haven't weighed this thing. I'm like, I'm supposed to wait, but it's just one lemon, you know.
Yeah.
I was just like, what?
Yep.
So that was a whole like new culture for me to like unearth.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's how I started cooking.
So with regards to cooking and recipes, I find it very I guess heartwarming in a sense, because it kind of opens up like a new dialogue with, let's say, your elders.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned your grandmother with like the kong baba and everything. Has your journey in cooking helped you have like a closer relationship with, I guess, your parents and I guess your grandparents, as they talk about, I guess, their culture, they share their recipes and you learn from them?
That's a very interesting question, yeah, because when I think I was observing my mother and how she cooked, because after I stopped living with my grandparents, like after I grew up, then I didn't need them to like babysit me the entire day. So I just like, I mean, they just led their own lives without caring about me because I was like in secondary school.
Yep.
Then my mother would be the one cooking dinner for me, not my grandmother anymore. So I just like curious and like I'll just observe what she does in the kitchen. And one day, that was before like the JC times, I asked her like, can I try frying my own egg? Because I kept eating like the fish fingers and the fried egg, right? At least I tried to make the fried egg because the fish fingers doesn't need to be taught to me. Yep. You just put it in the oven. So I asked her that and then she was like, oh, you try lor. Then when I was cracking the egg, I missed the bowl and dropped on the floor. And then she just scolded me, you know. Like I really didn't expect her to scold me. She was like, you can't even crack the egg when you try to fry it. So I was like quite upset after that day, and she kind of like made me not want to step into the kitchen.
Oh dear, okay.
Yeah, but I think after I told her like, I'm going to try again and like, you don't disturb me. I'm just going to try to not make a mess and like, you can trust me. And then after that point, it's like, I got very interested to find out how she cooks her stuff because I'm just following like online recipes, right? Literally they tell me to put like all these ingredients. I don't even need to like ask for help. Yeah. And there were like pictures and videos. But when it came to like what she cooked, it was quite high level to me. It's like she can perfectly fry like a wedge of salmon and it's like, ooh, it's really delicious when she fries it. But when I look at the salmon, I'm like, how long am I supposed to? And like, she just says, oh, by fueling, or like, just flip when.
I keep hearing that as well.
I don't know. Then when she fries vegetables, I'm like, how can it taste so nice? Like, there's a beautiful char on like the Chinese vegetables, or like the broth is like so thick. And then I'll ask her like, what do you put inside? Then she will be like, oh, like the dried anchovies, dried scallops, like red this. Then I'm like, how am I supposed to obtain all these things? And like, how does this even work, right? Like the whole like Chinese gastronomy world it's just insane because they like boil things for like 5 hours.
They do.
Like, how do you even know what goes together? There's too many herbs and spices. Same for like a lot of different cultures. That's why I've stuck to like Western food, like just throwing vegetables into the oven. That's the best meal for me back then. Yeah. So I think I've asked my mother, like, what do you put in your vegetables? And she's just like soy sauce, abalone sauce, and like oyster sauce. Then I'm like, it's not even like you put your own, you just buy the sauce from the supermarket and put it in lah. Then I was like a bit shocked because I thought like she made everything from scratch. But then I think after reading like cookbooks and like, I guess observing what goes into my dish in general, I figured out that like just ginger, garlic, chili padi, and like salt, pepper, onions, like
a pretty staple stuff.
That's the best stuff that can flavor any dish. And after like reading to Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, like reading that book, it was like life-changing.
Life-changing?
No, for sure. Like that book was really an eye-opener.
Okay.
Because like it tells about how you use salt, how you use fat, acid, and heat. Like you don't really look at food that way.
That's more of the gastronomy side, right?
Yeah, but when you figure out like you need a bit of each in each dish, and like sometimes you want to like cut down on butter because it's like not very healthy, then you'll be like, oh, but my dish is lacking flavor in that aspect. And sometimes some things can't be compromised if you're looking for that balance of flavor. Or sometimes it just needs a squeeze of a lemon. So it's like all these things that make me like want to cook more. But cooking is also a hassle in itself, I must say. Sometimes I feel so lazy to like, oh my gosh, like I hate cutting vegetables. Like I know that's like such an easy step for people, but I'm not very good at like chopping things evenly, especially like carrots. I can't do carrots at all. Yeah, so it's like when I have to cut like a lot of vegetables, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not even gonna get to the frying stage. I like it when like I like saute my aromatics and like, ooh, there's like nice smell and like, I see things boiling and things coming together, and that makes me happy. But I need to get through the prep work. But yeah.
Have you cooked for your family before?
I did that before. Yeah, I'm so proud of myself for doing that. Okay, but I don't think it tasted that great. But I remember like for Mother's Day and Father's Day, and I think in that particular year, I first started cooking. Then I made them some food. I can't remember what it is, but it's probably like some kind of like tomato pasta or something easy. And then I was like, oh, I followed this recipe. And like, there's some things that I didn't understand. Like, where can I get this certain ingredient, and like, why must I buy celery? It sucks. Yeah, then I asked my mother, and she's like, oh, you can just take it out lah. Like, I'm not gonna kill you if you don't follow the recipe. Then I just realized that like recipes are just like a guide for you to like improvise on. And I had a bit more knowledge then, so it's like a bit easier to tell like what's right and what's wrong. And like people are not gonna judge you at the end of the day. Like you try.
Like this is lacking celery and they get mad at you. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So at what point of your cooking journey are you at right now? Like scrambled eggs, no issue. Pasta, no issue.
Okay, like fun fact, like in 2018 and 19, I tried selling sourdough toast in my university hall.
Well, what is sourdough toast?
Like, you know, like toast just with like avocados, or like toast with scrambled eggs. Okay. And like toast with smoked salmon. Yeah. Okay. Those were like the brunch basics.
It sounds like brunch food, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like brunch food, but I just sold it at like $3-4 because it was in school. And I just did it for fun. I didn't even make the bread myself. But I just enjoyed making scrambled eggs so much at that point of my time. So I was like, let me run my small little shop. And then my friend did like a coffee pop-up. So we just did this kind of like brunch service.
Everything melded together, gotcha.
Yeah, so that was actually how I started cooking a bit more. And at what point I'm at now, I think like there are some days that I really want to make a nice meal for myself. My nice meal is not crazy complex lah. I enjoy following a lot of people who are like chefs and like people who like make recipes on Instagram, because like whatever they do is so inspiring, and like they post a lot of videos which are very visually appealing. It makes me hungry all the time.
It's ridiculously beautiful sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they plate it so well, I'm like, oh, let me try, but like never mind. Yeah, so because of that, sometimes I feel like very inspired to make like a certain thing that people have made, something more complex. So sometimes I will try to like make my own sauce, or like I really enjoy making like pesto. So it's like a very flavorful pasta, but it takes a lot of effort. And sometimes I make like bolognese from scratch. So like I roast the tomatoes instead of using like canned sauce and stuff. And then I need to like use a blender and then buy fresh herbs. So when I feel like a fancy meal, I'll try to make that for myself. But like on normal days, I do cook like random stuff. Like I'll just put together like noodles that are boiled with like a bit of like chili oil and like maybe a fried egg, and like fry some mincemeat with like some peppercorns, and like it's not bad. It's a meal. Yeah. So there's two different types.
Does the fish fingers make a appearance?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore. Gotcha.
Thankfully.
Yeah. So going back to food culture, what do you like about Singapore's food culture?
I like it. I like that it's very vibrant and diverse.
Okay.
I think the more I read into like food culture, or the more I expose myself after starting the Slow Press, it's been very different from like what I experienced in my life. Because like there's so many cool people out there doing very amazing things, and like they're very, very brave to like start their own like path. Like you see restaurants doing like Singaporean fine dining, and you're like, what is Singaporean? Like, are you trying to make like a fine dining plated laksa or nasi lemak? Like at first I didn't understand what they meant by that. But like people like Magic Square, they're doing so much for like the community, because they're taking like Singaporean ingredients, or like ingredients that we use in Singapore, and like changing it up to another level. Like maybe they use like Japanese dry aging techniques for the fish, but they pair it with like ginger flower or like tamarind, like things we're familiar with, but in a very different kind of context. And that's like super interesting for me right now. But other than that, I think like hawkers are so amazing, because they started doing this thing so long ago. And every hawker store just tastes different, even if they're selling the same product. Which is like, oh, I can get like super good like bak chor mee here, and then if I go another neighborhood, it tastes different. And like I think it's something to look forward to. And there's just like so much food for us to consume. I think recently I've been trying to like step out of my comfort zone a bit more, and like not just keep eating the same stall, and like trying out maybe like Malay cuisine, Indonesian food, because like I've never really been in touch with those. And like now that I'm trying it, I'm like, oh, there's so many different types of curry, and like Tekka Center, I just tried like this Sri Lankan food thing.
Sri Lankan food?
Yeah, I had no idea how to order at all. It's basically like Sri Lankan Cai Fan or like the same concept as Nasi Padang. So it's just like 10 different dishes there and like there are no names on labels, right?
Yeah, you're just pointing and you're just getting it for
there
you.
was this guy carrying like a really nice plate of like 5 dishes, and then he looked like he can speak English. So I was like, of course lah. Then I just like looked at him. I was like, how do I order the same thing as you? Then he just looked at the guy, and then they'll just look at each other, and then we were like, oh, all good. Then he was like, yeah, this one nice. Then we were like, okay, let's just like get it and pay. Yeah.
So the stepping out of your comfort zone means just trying different cuisines, or is there like certain types of ingredients or certain types of food that you will want to, I guess, learn how to appreciate or just try?
I think something that, okay, it might be a bit overrated in Singaporean culture, like, you know, Peranakan food.
What is that?
So it's like Nyonya cuisine. It's kind of like what the government portrays as like a beautiful marriage between Chinese and the Malay cultures.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a interracial thing. So like this group of like Singaporeans, they cook stuff like ayam buah keluak and like beef rendang, and like it's a mix of both cultures, but there's no like fine line between like what is what. And there's also a bit of like tension over there between like different cultures lah, because it's kind of a bit of each. And those dishes require like really, really long prep times because you need to like make a spice paste, like a rempah for it, and like you need to use a pestle and mortar to like grind it up. If not, it's like not authentic. But people can just use a blender. It's the same. Yeah. Don't put me on that, but it's okay. No, it's really the same. But like, I mean, your grandma won't tell you to do that anyway. So they use like so many different types of chili, so many different types of like spices, and like I feel like it's very underappreciated, like this amount of like labor that goes into that. And then like when you taste the curry, you're not going to say like, oh, they put like candle nut in this, they put like tamarind in this, or like star anise. Like you're not going to like point it out. You're just going to slurp down the whole thing. And then when you ask like your mother, like, oh, like you see your mother spending like 3 days cooking it, and you're like, dude, that's insane. So like, I think that's one facet of like food culture that should be more appreciated beyond like the touristy value of it. Because like if you go to like Violet Oon's kitchen, which has so many outlets right now, like that's the main like kind of dishes that they're serving. And a lot of like tourists just like hit there. It's interesting you mentioned it, because I was going to ask, like, do you feel that we don't appreciate the diversity of food, and I guess even the food choices that we have in Singapore? Because what I do like, and when I look into how people do their prep for certain kinds of food, I like the ritualistic aspect of it, because something they are so used to doing. And yes, you can use a blender to achieve the same results, but they didn't grow up with a blender. They grew up with perhaps their parents teaching them how to do this, and there is something very ritualistic about that it's quite esoteric lah. Like all this effort and energy goes into food, and it's made with love and whatever. But do you feel that especially across the years, I was going to ask you, what have you noticed about the food culture changing across the years? I think food culture is very, very broad. I think it can be broken up into like, I guess, the different demographics and like even like how people's lifestyles are shaped. Because like, I think for people who are like students, they don't really see a need to like cook at all. The most they cook is like a hot pot in like the Maggie university hall. Or like late night food. I just like...
So it's more functional.
I think a lot of people still come from that kind of standpoint. And like, I guess meal prep was quite a big thing. Maybe a few years ago, people are like, oh, I started like working out. So I just cook like chicken breast, sweet potatoes, and like a bunch of greens. And I just like, I can pack it and put it in the fridge, and I have the same meal like ready for me every single day. Like I just need to do it once a week. And like, I think that puts food in like a very sustenance kind of mindset. I mean, it's great for people who believe in like things being like an orderly fashion, the easiest way out. And like, I think a lot of Singaporeans still feel that way about food, especially like if you go to anywhere during like the rush hour, you see like office workers just like queuing up for food, and they're like, oh, I'll just go for the one with the shorter queue because I don't have time. Or like when officers like order in food, they're like, oh, grab food, then they just pick whatever. So it's always like everyone just has to eat the same thing. Or like, I mean, if they're at the hawker center, it's like, at least there are more options. So if people are going to spend like 5 days a week having the same thing as other people for lunch, I think that kind of like restrains their mindset on like, oh, I don't really have like headspace to think about food, right? So I think that's something that hasn't changed about like food, unfortunately. Like I don't really see a lot of people like taking time to like think a lot about food. I think maybe people are starting to realize that like, oh, there are a lot more like varieties that they can choose from, especially like when tourists come to Singapore, they have a lot to explore. But I feel like they don't really think about the process that goes behind it. And sometimes like people market food as like, oh, we really like get the freshest ingredients and we really like put in like so much effort in the kitchen, right? I don't think that should be downplayed in any aspect lah. People shouldn't be like, oh, but why am I eating like this $20 fried rice when like I can just get like the King of Fried Rice one for like $5, you know? Like people don't see like the value in like the hard work that goes into it. And it's not the same as like, I think something people tend to do a lot is like they compare the cost of the ingredients to like the cost of the dish. And they're like, why am I paying like this amount when like this fish, if I cook it at home, is only like $10, right? Why am I paying like $40 to get like the best steak, but the piece of meat is like $12 for the same grams, you know? But you don't see like craft is one thing, and like, yeah, craft is very, very important when it comes to food as well. If people can like spend thousands of dollars on an artwork, food is also an art. And not trying to be like cliche or anything, but like I think people that work in the kitchen really work very, very hard. And like, I mean, there's like the whole thing about how people should be working like lesser hours, you know, like when Candlenut told everyone that like they're having like 4-day work weeks and stuff. And like, I think F&B is like slowly starting to shift a bit more. Like they're making these improvements within like restaurants that are like more independent lah, at least.
I think F&B has always been regarded as like a brutal business. It's stupidly brutal. So when it comes to food culture, like there's so many aspects of it to like consider. Like people working in food culture and people appreciating it, and like So have you always had this perspective with regards to food, like seeing beyond the plate or seeing what is just right in front of you? Have you always had this, or did you after that's Illuminary course in your school, and then you started a slow press and you started to I think broaden your perspective with regards to the amount of effort, the amount of prep, I guess the amount of like hardship that goes into just creating something consistent. I think what is very interesting to me about food is like, because the ingredients are they're kind of alive in a sense, because it's actually quite difficult to get consistency with regards to going to like your regular store and you're expecting like a certain flavor. To me, that's very difficult to get, because I throw stuff onto the fire and it becomes edible, and the food, the taste fluctuates. So the idea of getting consistency even to your restaurants and everything, I think it's quite difficult. Yeah, it's like an art in itself. Yeah. So back to my question, have you always had this perspective? And if not, what changed it?
No, I've never had this perspective until like recent years. I think it's a mix of everything. When I first started cooking, I realized how difficult it is. Like, if you don't know how to cook, you're literally just dealing with raw vegetables. If you're hungry, you're like, oh no, how am I supposed to make this into something I can eat? So I've eaten so many horrible plates of my own food. But then when I eat it, I'm just like, oh, I didn't salt it properly at the start. I add salt now, also no use. After I eat so many plates, I'm like, I have to deal with my own consequences. And cooking is literally so hard. Even after like a few years of like playing around in the kitchen, like sometimes it's like, oh, if I'm super hungry, I'm just gonna like walk downstairs and get like a bowl of noodles. Like, I can't take it anymore. I'm not gonna like try to figure out what to make from the fridge. But it's also because like, I guess when I traveled a bit more, that kind of like expanded how I see food. Because like, when I went on exchange in the UK right before like COVID, then me and Melody, our designer, we lived in the same house. So like, the other people in our house had like lesser experience than us in cooking. And like by experience, both of us didn't really have much experience lah. So we were like, oh no, what do we do? And then both of us like kind of planned the meals for the whole house, like almost every single day. I mean, sometimes we'll eat out, but we know that each meal will cost like at least $30.
I heard it's ridiculously expensive.
And then like the portions are also like ridiculously large sometimes. Like when you eat fish and chips, you're like, oh no, I can actually share it. But then sometimes if you go to a restaurant, you don't really want to like just like share food, you know. It's like a very Asian thing and people like look down on you, which sucks lah. But so we had to cook quite a lot, and like that got us cooking a lot of Asian food because it's something that we couldn't really find. And then we had to like make use of like limited ingredients. Sometimes we just make our own like dumplings because we couldn't we didn't want to like buy the frozen ones and keep. So for Chinese New Year, we made our own like dumplings as like a bonding activity.
Yeah.
And like all these things of like seeing people in our house come together. It was very different from like me cooking by myself at home because they're actually people tasting my food.
Yeah.
And they can't really blame us because they can't cook. So in order for them to save money and still have food to eat, they have to suck up like whatever we cook for them. And then they are tasked with like the dishwashing. So like, I think it was quite fun for both of us. And that's probably one of the reasons why we started the slow press as well. Yeah. So I think it's definitely a mixture of everything that I've experienced, especially last year when I got to go to Vietnam. It was very, very cool to see like how people can just set up a shop from a push cart. And then people have like one induction cooker but don't have space to put it out for people to see. So they squat down and like fry the meat. Then they're like, oh, you want the grilled pork? Then they just start frying for you and you have to wait like maybe 5 minutes because if there's a queue and something like that, then there's also like Grab drivers waiting and everything, right? Wow, then you see people like making things out of nothing and they're doing with like super limited space, super limited ingredients, and like they don't have like a proper fire. It's just an induction cooker, right? So when you see people make delicious food out of nothing, you're like, but people in restaurants have so much, and like, why? Like there's such, it gives me so much to think about because like I think in Vietnam a lot of foods have like raw vegetables, like literally just chopped vegetables, a bit of fish sauce, chili padi, and like this kind of like aromatics that we can get in Singapore as well. So it's like, oh, if vegetables can taste so good raw, then like what am I missing out on like my entire life? Like why haven't I formed an appreciation for it? And I think especially in Vietnam, it's quite cool that they use rice for so many different things. Like rice paper is like a craft of its own because like after it's being made into paste, you have to like dry it out on the racks. That's why there's like all the patterns, right? And then I remember my mother telling me like, oh, so funny, like it doesn't look like cloth like that. I'm like, literally that's what they dry it on. Like, mom, they didn't stamp it. Then like you can see rice in so many forms. It's being used as like prayer food items as well. So like I guess it's similar to kueh in Singapore. Yeah, and then there's like sticky rice, and then there's also like different kinds of rice rolls similar to like chi cheong fan, and also like different types of like things that are similar to chi kueh as well.
It sounds like having the opportunity to, I guess, travel abroad to our, let's say, like neighboring like Bangkok, Malaysia. It kind of broadens your horizon as to what people use food for as well. Like how they utilize. It sounds like they're utilizing. They're doing a lot with just very very
just
little.
one thing, and it's something that's like native to them, which is why like I think something that like inspired me a lot was like, I mean, it still inspires me. It's this bar called Native. If you have heard of them.
No, I have not.
Right. They're like one of the best in Singapore. And like, I guess I wasn't really into bars here until I started the slow press and made friends with like some people from the industry. So like after visiting that bar, I was like, dude, there's one drink that's like pandan. There's one drink that tastes like kaya toast. And like,
that's incredible.
Yeah. And they make their own like distillates. So it's like you're taking one ingredient that like everyone just like disregards. I feel like people just like, oh, pandan is just enough flavor for like chiffon cake, lol. I can eat vanilla, I can eat chocolate, and there's pandan, which is like an Asian flavor, I guess. And then I just realized like there's so much that they can do with like pandan and coconut, and it forms like the base of like Malay cooking, Indonesian cooking, Thai cooking. Yeah, and like because I had the opportunity to go to like Thailand and Bangkok as well as KL for the art book fairs last year with the team. So it was like, dude, I literally made that decision for myself. I was like, I want to try more Southeast Asian food and like, let's just go there and like apply for the art book fair. So that was like the biggest goal for the slow press last year. And I'm so happy I did it because like the food there was just like different. Like I go there and I eat stuff that are not like the Thai food in Singapore because I just try to like avoid it because like how different can basil pork taste over there and here. I mean, I keep hearing my friends who, let's say, they go to Japan and they, let's say, take like the sushi over there and wax lyric about how different the sushi over there is compared to whatever that is served here, and it's on another level. That's what they keep saying. So what I'm curious to know is like, when you travel to these countries, what do you think we could learn from them?
just in terms of like food culture and stuff like that. Because there is something very unique about the way they treat food, the way they handle their food. I think I remember back in Bangkok where there was this market and people just set up like just a roadside stuff and they sell like zhi there, and it's like okay, cool. And the food is stunning. Yeah. But you will never see something, you will never see that I guess spontaneity and that that practicalness in Singapore, because it's oftentimes very regulated. You need to have certain like guidelines and boundaries, which is a pro and cons of its own. So I'm curious to know, having traveled to these particular places, what do you think we could learn from them?
Right. And to go back to what you mentioned about like the sushi being like great in Japan and stuff, I feel like Singaporeans have this mindset of like looking outside of Singapore for like greener pastures. They just be like, oh, like I want to go to this particular place. Like I always want to travel. Singapore is so boring. And like I really like to debunk the myth for them, because it's like, have you tried every single hawker center in Singapore? Like, have you tried this restaurant? Have you even went to the market? And then when you go to a market in like Bangkok and you're like, oh, night markets are so cool, but then you avoid pasar malams in Singapore, you say like, oh, very smelly, very noisy. And like I really don't understand that aspect of like Singaporeans. But then it also comes from like, I guess like genuine curiosity when they go there and like they change their minds, which is great. Like they might return to Singapore with like a different mindset. And I think what we can learn from traveling to other countries, right? Like, I guess you try to like talk to locals and you get the recommendations from them. Or like for me, if I'm eating street food, I don't go and search like, I mean, it's impossible to search where is like the best food, and like because some places like the push carts just appear and they don't appear anymore the next day. And you don't even know their operating hours, right? So usually if I want to eat something local, I just like walk around and like see what people are eating. Then I'll just like go for it. And like I think in Singapore the mentality is always like, I want to search out the menu before I go there. And the menu doesn't even exist in like these small shops or like eateries. Or I can't even understand the word, especially like Thai or Vietnamese. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna like point to the next person's meal and like, can I have the same thing? It's
an adventure of its own.
Exactly. I think that's like the most fun for me. I think a lot of people started asking me for like recommendations after like they've seen Slow Press post about stuff, and I'm like, dude, this place doesn't even have a location tag. I mean, I wish I could help you, but it's just this store opposite this road, and they're like, it's okay, I'll go find it by myself. But I think like locals know best. So like what I've done is like I just find like English speaking people and ask them lah. But if not, I'll just like observe and see like, oh, this has the longest queue.
And you figure things out on your own.
Yeah, even if it sucks, it's still better, because like I don't even know what's like the precedent, right? Like local, I trust that like I'm eating authentic food there and the people look like they know their stuff. So like whatever lah, I won't only want to like pigeonhole into like this is good, this is bad. I don't have any like standards anyway.
So what is interesting, I think in recent years, where there has been a lot of importation of these particular cultures. Like you have Thai food in Singapore, you have Vietnamese food in Singapore. Have you heard the adage where people will seek out spots where they kind of communicate only in that particular language and they think, oh, that's good? Have you heard that adage before? Because a couple of my friends will go to particular, let's say like Filipino food or like Vietnamese food, and they go, and when they go in and and people are speaking like just the native language, they know it's good. Yeah, because there's this trend of having to cater to our taste buds, having to cater or having to divert away from, let's say, how Pad Thai tastes in, let's say, Thailand to how Pad Thai tastes in Singapore. I've heard where what is authentic or original that might not fly here because we have such different or unique taste buds.
Yeah, there's really a lot, but it depends on the business's goals. Some businesses operate to serve like their local communities that are living in Singapore, especially for like the small Vietnamese eateries. Like the best ones out there aren't those that are in like the malls, but basically just go to Geylang and like they will be speaking in Vietnamese, so you will know like, oh, that's the right place to go. And then sometimes you'll just see like locals around and stuff. But I don't think like Singaporeans should be like so picky in like what they eat. I mean, it's good to be like using that as like a benchmark. Like for example, if you own a Japanese restaurant, the chef has to be Japanese. Or like, I don't know, some people look out for that. Like, why are you cooking like Malaysian food when you're not Malaysian? That kind of thing. Interesting. Because like a lot of hawkers nowadays, like because young people don't really want to like take over their family businesses, you will see like people who are not like, definitely not from like a hawker family starting like a hawker business and stuff. Or maybe like, I guess mainland Chinese people also like helping out at hawker stores, and you'll be like, they're not from Singapore. Then like, why are they doing it? And then you like avoid that store. But what if like they have the best food like in the hawker center? And like, I don't want people to like have the impression that just because you are not from this culture doesn't mean that you can't cook the food. And I feel like it makes people like have a barrier to entry in some sense, because sometimes you might feel intimidated to like go up to like certain people to like ask for help even. Like, I guess it's also a very like cultural thing lah. Like sometimes you feel like you're not qualified to like cook a certain cuisine just because like your grandmother was in Peranakan, and then like you might feel like you're doing things like not by the rules and like skipping steps, and like how would the person feel, like the person who wrote the cookbook, or like maybe like an elder person who has so much experience.
Interesting. I do think that we face a ridiculous churn with regards to, let's say, we talk about hawker centers. And how it seems that we have this fixation on like renewing things and even like revitalizing certain spaces. I've seen so many, let's say, case in point, like the old Changi Airport, Old Airport Road, like there was this really big hawker center over there. And I think one of the days when we tried to go down for food and realized, oh, it's closed. And we look at the notice, oh, they're just changing different things. And they're I think closed for like 2 to 4 months. And it's ridiculous. It's like if I'm a hawker over there, it's like, how am I gonna make a business and make a living? So I think one of the recent trends that I've noticed is where a lot of like these people who run individual stores, like they might have been working for like decades even, and big franchises coming in and taking over and starting up their own, let's say their own Thai Fun franchise, where it's all the same and you lose a bit of that individuality. That's what I've noticed. Have you noticed that in recent years as well?
Yes, definitely. I think when like, it depends on the business goals though. Like Hawker Chan has like opened up in overseas countries and like they have so many franchises now, but I started from one like Chinatown store. And because they got like a Michelin recognition or something back then. So it's like, I think a lot of people think that the standards have changed since then. And like, I guess Singaporeans being Singaporeans, they just like compare and like, oh, it used to taste better. It didn't have this kind of thing.
But it's all subjective. Who knows
all subjective,
really?
And it's also not like, I guess you could say commercialization, but isn't it great to like put Singapore on a greater map and like let people know like, this is our pride and like, this is what people last time worked hard for. Like, they're not working hard to like raise in ranks in like the corporate job, but like these people are fighting for like the best chicken rice. And like, I think that's pretty admirable, and like nothing should take away that from the hawkers.
Do you feel that in a very short, let's say if we project like 5 to 10 years, that we will lose a very integral part of Singapore food culture, which is the hawker center, because as a lot of the hawkers have been operating, let's say 2 to 4 decades even, and nobody wants to take up the business. Or even if they try, a lot of variables are acting against them with regards to rent, with regards to cost, and they're not able to sustain. I think for it's interesting because if you look at, let's say the local papers, you will say, oh, this 26-year-old quitting banking and fucking doing fishball noodles or something. But with those articles being very prevalent, you also see articles where people just can't sustain it. And it makes me think that there will come a point in time where you lose that whole base of, let's say, elderly people or people even wanting to do business as a hawker, and it gets replaced by bigger franchises.
I think that also changes with like the shifting meaning of food to each individual. Like if the hawker just gives up, maybe they are just like, it's not worth fighting for anymore because like my rent's just gonna get higher. I can't raise the cost of fishball noodles. There's like so many like news articles saying that like people have been complaining because I increased the price by like 50 cents or like portions are getting smaller and stuff. But they don't really see the bigger picture because like they are the consumers and like they technically don't have to, but like people are like sweating it out to like pick out food for them. They work insane hours and like if you've never worked in F&B before, right? It's nothing that you can like complain about, you know. Like I think it takes everyone to work in F&B to know like, oh damn, I should appreciate my food a lot more and not like go to a cafe and be like, hi, can I have water? Like you can see that people are like busy and stuff, right? So actually a lot of talk about like food and like culture comes down to like who we are as people and like how we act in like a public space. I think like a lot of people don't see that. And that's why people are like just differentiating like franchises and like hawker centers so much. But like, of course, we're going to lose like a lot of our culture. But like, I want people to like appreciate the culture to begin with. Like if you're just gonna see your hawker store as like, oh, I'm just gonna get the same food, like I can get cheap food. Like the biggest thing that I don't like about what people think about hawker centers is like, oh, I love hawker centers because the food is cheap. And like, oh, but I don't really want to sit there because it's a bit hot. So I'm just gonna like tap out and like pay for containers when I can like bring my own, right? If I'm coming from the office, they're not even doing them a favor because like they need to order more plastic boxes because of you. Then like, people just like, oh, I love hawker food, it's cheap, but they don't see like there's a crazy amount of prep work that goes into like Cai Fan. There's like the curry dish already takes like 10 hours to boil, and like you're just like, oh, can I have a bit of curry sauce? You're like, you don't think about that sort of thing, and then like one day your Cai Fan's gonna run out, and like then you just complain like why they closed, why they sold out. But like people are just trying to live, you know. And like I guess because Singapore isn't as street as it was last time.
As what, sorry?
Street.
Okay.
Like last time hawkers used to be like along the road, and like that's why the government wanted to like put them into like more organized centers. Because we didn't see that era of Singapore. So it feels like a bit like we don't see the hard work that goes in and like how they progress from like those times. And like I guess when we go to like other Southeast Asian countries, we see like how like bustling the streets are, and we're like, oh, this is a novel thing to do, to dine by the street.
But we used to be like that in the 60s, 70s.
And like you're not being appreciative to things that you already have. And I think because of that, we are losing a lot of like our culture.
Does it feel inevitable in a sense as Singapore tries to brand itself as like a food hub? It tries to brand itself as, I'm really trying really hard to preserve these particular hawkers, these particular food cultures. But on the other hand, you have people like these hawkers are facing this incredible churn. Like they can't keep it up. Nobody wants to take up the business. And even if they want to take up the business, there's like the incentive of profits. I mean, there's been recent articles where, there's this like particular kueh store trying to sell the recipe, then nobody wants to take it. Then nobody wants to take it, then it will close. And if it closes, people are sad. It feels inevitable to a certain degree that we'll face a point in living as Singaporeans where you go to a hawker and you see the same thing. Like the malls. You go to the malls, you see all the same thing because it gets a bit too difficult. Like all the variables are stacked against, I guess, people even wanting to try.
I think like the biggest turning point for everyone was definitely circuit breaker and COVID in general, because like digitalization has invaded our lives, and like the only way to get convenient meals is like through Grab. And like if you don't understand English, if you are like an old hawker that only knows Chinese, right, then how are you gonna continue doing this business? You lose like maybe 70% of like office customers, and like especially during circuit breaker, you can't even operate even. So it's like all these things that like it makes me so worried, right? But then again, there's only like so much I can do. Like the most I can do is just document them, but it's also like not enough because like how many stalls can I take photos of? And like there are a lot of like small initiatives which are great, and like other platforms like trying to help hawkers, like those group buys with like Facebook groups, and like they're like, oh, you want to order from like, this hawker center, we can all order together. Like those are really cool initiatives that I appreciate. But I think it has to take like the whole of Singapore to like do something lah. Or like if people are not gonna like want to be hawkers anymore, then like what kind of food are we gonna eat in the future? Like I actually worry, you know. Oh no.
Sometimes when I think about it, I think about how, I guess, privileged and how special of a time where we are able to get such affordable prices for regards to food as compared to, let's say, in someone in America or someone in UK. You're able to get such unique and diverse offerings like a stone's throw away from where we live. And if you think about, as I said, if you project out into the future, it seems that will hit a point where it's untenable. People just give up because it's not worth it. If there's no new blood doing this, because the idea of even doing something like that for like decades now, it seems unrealistic.
But I feel like it's also something that like Singapore did to itself, because like in other countries, food that is like native to the country is highly valued by like people. And
Like the community.
yes, it's like, oh, it's so beneficial to run my own family eatery. It's my pride. Like 40 years of like doing this, and I can pass this to like my child. Like they are very happy to like do all these things together, you know, knowing that like the whole neighborhood will come and support. But like in Singapore, everything's like meritocracy. Like I want to get the best grades, and like all our children are just like striving for like the same jobs in the company, you know. Like I want to be specialized in this field, and like of course we're not gonna be cooking if everyone's like mentality, every parent's mentality is like, no, you cannot be a hawker, you cannot work in like service, like that's not good enough for you. They're just gonna be like, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a doctor. And I feel like it's still a very traditional mindset, like competitive mindset even. Like even if you say like young parents and stuff, like I don't know how their mindset will be, but who doesn't want their child to like
find success?
Yeah, find success and like feed themselves, you know. Like I guess I do creative work, so like I see things in a more unconventional light, I feel like, and my parents, like, thankfully they respect what I do and what I want to do with my life. But for a lot of my peers, it's like they are stuck in like a job that they might not fully enjoy, but they're kind of just doing it. Yeah. And because of like this mindset, like if somebody were to like just step out of their job and be like, I want to be a hawker, I want to help my grandma sell soya milk, then like everyone's just gonna be like, well, what do you just do? You just threw away all your education, which is why it's like so unsupportive and so unmotivating for anyone to like even venture into that path of their life. Maybe like when they retire and stuff, but like that's gonna be too late, right? Yeah.
I've never heard the conversation where someone says, I want to be a hawker. I've heard the conversation where people say, I want to open a cafe. I want to open a restaurant. But I've never heard, oh, I want to be a hawker.
I actually know one friend. Who really wants to open a cai fan store. Because she really likes eating cai fan. And she wrote a piece in Slow Press Volume 1. It was a picture of her in primary school eating cai fan, which is really adorable. So like, when she told me that, I was like, dude, maybe I should go and sell vegetables in the wet market. Like, let's be in the same hawker center next time, man.
Props.
So it's like, because of how like society has ingrained this thinking into us, it's like, it's just impossible to imagine like somebody being a hawker, somebody inspired to like be a hawker. I'm sure there are people out there, like don't get me wrong. There are a lot of young people that are stepping up, and that's amazing to see. But that's also not going to be sufficient at all.
It's like, whether is it sustainable? Like the inflow and the outflows, like it's always like this particular battle.
And like, of course, given the resources we have, who doesn't want to open a restaurant? If they have the money, they can jolly well do it. They can just find a unit and like bring in fancy furniture and like get started, right? So it's easy to say like, I want to start a cafe, and you can find people that are willing to work because like hours are okay, you get paid decently, and like people enjoy the space anyway. It looks good. Food's good. So like, I think it's just like a very different kind of like social class in a sense.
Interesting.
Which also sucks because like if you're just eating hawker food because it's cheap, but people like, to them that's the only thing they can afford. And that's one whole new thing that like, that's why Singapore is like so unevenly distributed. It looks so put together.
Could you elaborate more on that particular train of thought? Like, what do you mean by it's unevenly put together?
I feel like, okay, so if like a tourist comes to Singapore, then like hawker centers are being advertised as like, oh, you can go to one place and try everything at once, right? I can get satay, I can get nasi lemak, and like I can have a good meal with 5 friends, and everyone gets everything. And like, I guess that mindset of like making hawker centers like looking good for like the tourists, so there are more touristy ones like Lau Pat Sat and like Maxwell.
That spot has changed so much, the Lau Pat Sat.
Oh my gosh, and they do like the satay thing on like Fridays and stuff. Lol. So like, I guess the act of like making the hawker centers more like, I guess, clean and presentable. Presentable for like that certain district that tourists frequent. I feel like it's just like making like a false image of Singapore, because like, I guess tourists don't really go to like heartlands and stuff, but like that's where we grew up, man. We're not like, local people know to like avoid Lau Pat Sat on like weekends because like, oh, we're just gonna be full of tourists, and also like the prices are like higher and stuff, and like it's more curated, and people don't need to like deal with like bad food experiences. there won't be 5 stalls selling like chicken rice.
Yep.
Like some other hawker centers, you just see like people competing with each other and people don't know like which is like nicer, right? But then you just like hit on this, you just try it out and like that's the whole experience. But like because of how like people usually go for like more curated things, I guess, if they get to do so, then like that kind of makes them lose out on like the joy of just like discovering food for themselves. And I guess because there's so many options in Singapore, you get to eat fancy stuff. I mean, if you are like financially able to eat fancy stuff, like you can do that any day. But like for a lot of people who are just like normal people and like they just cook a bit and they like eat out a bit and they're like, oh, let's just like find affordable food because like money's hard to earn. Like that happens for me too. Like I cook at home because like food, like if I buy produce and I just make a quick meal for myself, it's delicious and it's also cheap because I am my own labor. Yeah. So like if we're cooking food to like save money and stuff, it's also a very different mentality from people who can just like, I can buy everything, but like that's why like I feel like it's a very big like contrast between like what people are able to enjoy and what people allow themselves to enjoy. Yeah,
because it feels like we have to tread this very fine line with regards to attracting the overseas tourists while keeping food as like a stable, I think, commodity with regards to serving the people. And we have to tread this line like, because with regards to tourists, you can charge a bit higher, but with regards to serving the local, you have to have like a minimum base rate. It's always this really fine economical balance with regards to the whole presentation of it.
And how like chili crab is positioned as like a national dish, but how is it even like national or local to us? Like I interviewed some people about this last year and like they kind of told me that like, oh, hawker centers are like the normal Singaporean food, but like they need to present Singapore in like a luxurious manner as well. So that's why like chili crab was chosen as like this dish, which is like reminiscent of like the coast and like, wow, fishermen working hard and like it is something that's accessible because it's like very tomato based and like it's not very spicy anyway if you call it chili crab. And it brings like 10 people together. People can have like a business lunch or like tour groups can enjoy it. That's why like chili crab's purpose is like for that. But the chicken rice is like the food of the people. And like so they just see like Singapore in like this light and the other light. Yeah, which was very fascinating for me to hear.
Do you feel like there is like an arms race with regards to the food that becomes like a restaurant or goes to like a hawker? What I mean by that is like, it feels like it's not enough to just do Japanese food. You have to do like a fusion. You have to do like, oh, something new. You have to have like some fucking unique fucking spin to it that you can brand it and you can market it. Like it feels like the narrative of the food and the narrative of what that food is it goes beyond the actual food, because it feels like, oh, you have to do like a fusion of Japanese and Mediterranean and like Arab food, and you have to have that unique spin of it. Like it's no longer enough to just say, hey, I just want to do good Japanese food, because we are so I guess spoiled conditioned by convenience, spoiled for choice, and I guess blinded by the marketing lah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I always like cringe a bit is like during a National Day month, like August, then people are just like launching local versions of everything possible. And then you see like, I mean, a nasi lemak burger is a huge hit lah. I mean, it's great. I enjoy it. And then people are like, sometimes I feel that they're trying a bit too hard. Like a lot of restaurants started doing like laksa, spaghetti, like curry chicken. Oh, curry chicken buns are okay, but like, I can't really remember at this time, but like maybe like chili crab pasta and stuff like that, right? It's always a fusion of like something we call local and whatever they're serving. So even like Japanese restaurants might start doing like a National Day special. I don't know. But like, I guess it depends on what like the chef, I guess, wants to do. Some people are very like, they just block out everyone and they're like, I'm going to do it my way and I'm just going to serve like authentic French food and no one's going to like change what I do. I'm just doing what I do best, right? And like, I guess people who want to appeal to the masses, they just want to keep churning out like new products. Like every month have to launch like a new flavor of like, I guess Bread Talk does that a lot. They just keep changing up their menu, which is like cool and refreshing. I mean, I don't really patronize Bread Talk because like there's so many other bakeries other than Bread Talk to patronize lah, like traditional ones that that are around me in my neighborhood.
Yep.
But like, I guess it's cool in a way that like, I guess Singaporeans are always hungry for like new things, and like they see something that's visually appealing. It definitely attracts them already. Like, it's like if somebody invents like a new dessert and it looks great, right? Like maybe like a snow mountain kind of thing, you know, that kind of like over the top kind of desserts. And people are like immediately drawn to that. So I guess that's like marketing and like design and like visual appeal doing its work. Especially like Instagram, because like how people consume food content these days are like usually from Instagram, and like
alternative media.
If something isn't like visually appealing to you, then like why would you even try it? Which kind of sucks, because like people like to take photos of their food. If it's not like presented in a certain way, then they'll be like, oh, actually this restaurant isn't very exciting. I can't use that for my article, you know? And that's like you're kind of downplaying like all the family dishes lah. Like how good can like a luro fan look, or like how good can my mother's fried sweet potato leaves look? And like, but it tastes fucking delicious. And like, so there's always like this, am I going for like the Instagrammable quality of things, or like, do I just want to serve like hearty, homely food? And I think like restaurants have to deal with like these kind of considerations. Yeah.
So it's like the adage of eating with your eyes lah.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it kind of throws a very like, it's like a curveball variable that, oh, now the food I produce, it has to be cheap, it has to be convenient, it has to be taste good, and it has to look good as well. And the funny thing, I mean, like you can look on Instagram and it's visually appealing and you see the colors, maybe it's edited, whatever, but you can't taste it. It's just, you're just looking at it and you're imagining, oh, like all these particular ingredients, you read the caption, you read the story, and it kind of informs your perspective, even though you have never tasted before.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very interesting variable, let's say, to throw to like the hawkers who are not tech savvy at all, and they have to account for this variable that, I don't know, it's like a very strange conversation to even try to tell them, hey uncle, 你这个那个米包你要拍照拍好看的。
Yeah, 这个可以放在这边吗？这个辣椒不要放在里面，我自己放。You know, like how people want to do like the boring shot of stuff. Like, wow, headaches, I think the uncle confirm angry. Yeah, but I think like the pressure is really on businesses because they need to appeal to like this Instagram generation. I feel like hawkers kind of have a free pass in that, because people are like, oh, this is how it should be enjoyed. Like carrot cake can only look this good. Like, how are you gonna like stack it up or like deconstruct it? Yeah. Like, fine, since it's carrot cake and it's so delicious, right? I can let it look like this, like just a block of thing. But when like Singaporeans like to attribute like prices to like the quality of the
value,
thing. Yeah. So if they go to like maybe just like a shop in the mall, like fishball noodle store, and they're like, I'm eating in aircon, so this has to look better than the hawker center, you know. Then it gives people this kind of unnecessary pressure just to appeal to like these kind of people. And because of the rise of like food Instagram accounts, right? Everyone's like literally doing it, and like they're like, oh, I give this like a 5-star and everything. Then they'll be like, but it really affects how businesses are run, because like imagine if you are pretty solid place with like okay food, and like you have quite a lot of like returning customers, but actually a lot of them don't really use Instagram lah. Then some famous person comes in and be like, oh, I rated a 3 out of 5. And then you are like, what did I do to deserve this? It really ruins businesses, especially like Google reviews also. I have a lot of friends in the F&B industry, and they're like, this guy is so friendly, but then I think it's the guy that gave me like a 2 stars,
Oh man.
Then it's like, you don't even know what you did to like deserve that. And sometimes it hurts because they don't even explain why. Like maybe like at least try to be like a bit kind lah, or like at least justify why you feel this way. But sometimes people just give a rating and they don't say anything at all. And then like, oh, your overall star just drops and people are like, oh, the place only has like 4.1. Why should I go there? Yeah.
Do you think there's a place, or what do you think the place for food critic and food reviews is, going off that previous thought of yours?
There are definitely very, very like renowned food like critics in Singapore. Those that write for like CNA or like Prestige, and like I guess there's like this whole community of people who have been like critiquing food, invited for like food tastings for like most of their lives, and I think they do a really good job. And it's hard to find anyone to like actually replace them lah, because they're also quite like old already. Yeah, and because they have been doing it so much of their lives and they really formed like that credibility for themselves, I feel like I definitely trust them when like I see their reviews around lah. But nowadays with like the other food blogging websites, literally anyone can contribute, and like that. I guess some people like they don't have much experience, but I guess their stuff still gets published, and like it's so subjective. So people just have to take it at their own pace and like with a pinch of salt. So it's really up to the reader's discretion to tell if like this is worth it or not lah. So I feel like the place for food critic in Singapore is like anyone can do it, but as a consumer of media, I think in general you should just be wary of everything you read. You can't just be like buying into news or like reviews. I mean, it affects your own well-being lah.
Do you so let's say if you want to visit like a new spot, you've like your friend recommended to you, do you look up like a review of it, or do you just show up and just try something?
Okay, honestly, people are very scared when they eat with me.
Why is that?
They always tell me to suggest the place because they know that I might say no to most of the places.
Okay, are you a very picky eater?
Not picky, but I want to know like what I am paying for, because like if you're going to recommend this place, why not like you try this other place that I already tried, and like I feel like it's more value for money, it tastes better, and I'm also supporting like a local business, for example. Yeah. So I think like my thought process when somebody like recommends me a place, I mean, if I haven't heard of it, I'll definitely like check it out and see like whether the location is feasible lah. Like don't make me go to Changi just to eat something. I don't even live in the East lah. Like I think like you can do better lah. Like unless it's super good, I'm not gonna go all the way there. So I'm like, oh okay, I check out the restaurant, then I kind of like check out the Instagram as well, because like I guess branding to me matters, because like if you don't really do a good job at like marketing your food, then like why should I go there, right? Yeah, but then again, like it also has to be on par with what people say lah. Like I would expect a certain quality if like I read some reviews and people are like, oh, like all the dishes are great throughout, like because sometimes people will say like, oh, they're more like misses than hits, that kind of thing. Then I'll be like, should I actually go there? But then again, it still boils down to like the cuisine and the menu. If I think that it's like innovative enough for me to try, and like it's worth paying the certain price, then like yeah, I'll definitely be up for it. But I guess if sometimes people like recommend a place and I know of a place that is similar, I would be like, oh, this one nearer, or this one like I feel like trying out this dessert or something. Like I mean, I'm not trying to like convince them lah, but I feel like food should always be discussed. It's like fun to talk about, right? Like I don't want to be like somebody who dictates like, oh, let's all eat here. And then if people don't have their own opinions, then like they just blindly eating the food, no? Like even if we're just gathering for like just a chill vibe, right? I think it still matters to me that my friends enjoy the food and they're not just going along with my opinions.
Gotcha.
And I want to hear what they have to say about the food lah. Sometimes they'll be like, oh, nice lah. I think it's okay. Like I can't really tell whether it's like super good or not. And like it's totally fine. Like people just have their own ways to describe food lah.
Do you have a comfort food?
I have many actually.
Okay.
Wow. This is hard.
This is
surprisingly. Oh, like when I feel very stressed and sometimes I do work at like National Library.
Okay.
So I'll always go to like Fortune Centre and eat a bowl of dessert before I go home.
Okay.
Like it's like Chinese dessert. So it's that kind of like almond paste, tang yuan soup, yam paste. Because it's very warm and comforting. And like after spending a whole day in the cold ass library, like literally that's the best thing I can do before I go home. Yeah. And I guess in general, I really like Vietnamese food after I went to Vietnam. But sadly, I have diarrhea because of it right now. So sad.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, but I think Vietnamese food has shown me a lot about what people can do. And they just wash their dishes like along the street and everything.
They do.
Yeah, but to me, it's like, it's not disgusting. I mean, yes, to like everyone, if like, oh, there's like rats at the stores, yeah, how you still eat there? And then we like, there's no better food than like this auntie cooking it, man. Respect her craft. Yeah, I think like Vietnamese food has been my comfort food since last year lah.
Gotcha.
So that changed a lot for me. But like I guess normal food that I can find everywhere, I think my comfort food would be like ban mian.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Cause it's just like, it's very predictable. You're just gonna get a bowl of good soup. Yummy, chewy noodles. I love chewy noodles. Yeah.
Have you tried making your own noodles?
Wow, it didn't taste very good.
Okay.
I don't know what special kung fu they add to it. Like the Hai Di Lao person, right? Like, ooh. I can't possibly do that at home. So
Okay.
I rather trust other people to do it for me.
Gotcha.
But there are a lot of spots that I keep frequenting lah, because like
Just something about
I'm
the
just
cooking
so
and the prep.
unoriginal. I just like, no, I can't think, man. I'm just gonna go there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, with regards to food and I guess media and the prevalence of food and media, you mentioned about how I think Vice had Munchies and all these different
Yeah.
showcases of food. Do you feel like we're at a saturation point? Because right now, there's a lot of like food preparation videos. I think on YouTube there is food ASMR, TikTok. There is so much.
I think we've reached the saturation point way
Okay.
before today, man.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy that people are like creating such content about food. It shows that people are engaging with what they eat and they know what ingredients and they're actually cooking. Most of this is not in Singapore lah. Unfortunately, you don't see people cooking like, I don't know, Singaporean food and like making it into a TikTok trend globally and stuff. I mean, like not saying that it has to be done in order for like Singapore to be known to the world, right? I mean, with regards to food media, a lot of what we see is like the glamorized side of things. And dude, I've tried taking videos of myself cooking, like preparation process. I'm like, I just give up. My kitchen's so ugly. It's like, this is not a normal person's house. It's definitely taken in a studio, which also removes us from like our homely interactions with food, you know. Like, it doesn't really encourage us to like cook, I feel. Sometimes it's better to watch because we know that we won't really make a mess. I mean, we will make a mess if we cook at home. So like, I guess consuming this makes us like think more about food, which is very beneficial lah. But a lot more has to be done in terms of like just going out there and exploring food options on your own. Like, I think dining alone is still very frowned upon in Singapore.
Is it really?
Especially like I have some friends that are scared to like eat out by themselves. Like not just for like a fast meal, actually go out and like enjoy themselves eating. And it only recently happened to me, maybe in the past 2 or 3 years. That like I found it socially acceptable to be able to just go out and eat by myself.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like very weird, right? I don't know, like to somebody who has never eaten by themselves before.
Never eaten by yourself?
No, it's like because in school and stuff, right? You always have people to eat with.
Yes. And
So-
you have
and
your
then-
family at home,
yeah.
you have friends,
So there's literally no need to eat by yourself unless you are doing work at your desk because you need to rush deadlines, you know? People don't see it as an enjoyment. Like on weekends, if they want to eat by themselves, they'll just tapao food or they will just like go out with their friends lah. Like food is always seen as like a social activity. Let's get out for a meal. I won't be like, I want to go and eat by myself. Like I want everything by myself. But like it's because I spend a lot of time like exploring markets and like going to coffee shops to have coffee. And then I'm like, actually I'm quite hungry. But like cannot wait until I go home. So I just look around and be like, oh shit, nobody's eating by themselves. But like, let me just do that. And because I went to Vietnam alone both times, then I wanted to eat at some restaurants and I just went by myself.
That's fair.
But it was a bit scary lah. Yeah, because it's like, oh no, I've never spoken to like the service crew before. Like I've never tried making friends with random people at the bar, that kind of thing. So it's like, how should I go about doing it? But I'm so bored lor. Like, am I going to use my phone? But I'm overseas. I should be like talking to people. So I think after I made myself like more used to that, I think it changed a lot of like how I eat outside also.
It sounds like you're a lot more comfortable with it now as well.
Definitely now lah. Yeah, I try to encourage people to just like, nothing to do, just bring yourself out for a good meal lah. Yeah.
Have you seen the food prep videos and I guess the food ASMR videos?
Yeah, a lot of it.
It's stunning.
It's amazing, especially like the Korean ones.
The Korean
it's like
ones?
so slow and so calming. Like people making like a fluffy cake.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then like lo-fi music and you're like, then like the cream come out and you're like, wow. It's very therapeutic. Honestly.
It is. Does it inspire you to want to, I guess this is where you look at something like that. Does it inspire you to want to bake? Or are you just like, fuck this, it's so much work?
I think I definitely know how much work it is. And wow, I think like thinking about the amount of work, sometimes it throws me off. And like, I don't think I can do as good of a job as like somebody who runs a cake shop. So sometimes it's like, if I'm not feeling adventurous enough, I'm not going to bake a cake for my friends.
Gotcha.
Because I might fail. And I failed before when I promised people like, hey, let me bake you a cake for a birthday. And then it just
what turned out?
it was a bit subpar. Like a bit dry. And I was like, sorry guys. But like,
you tried.
yeah, at least I tried. But like, I guess there's some things that like, I look at it and I rather just go and get a better version of it outside, like kueh, for example.
Yep.
I don't even have the equipment, man. Like, if I buy a steamer, I might use it once and never use it again.
That's fair.
And like, I should support the auntie also lah, so might as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, diverting our attention back to what you mentioned about the slow press, what I found interesting is the word independent.
Right.
I'm curious to know why is it important for the slow press to be independent, and what does that mean, I guess, in this particular context?
I feel like us remaining independent is also because I don't want to like lean towards doing like sponsored content or like brand related content.
Yep.
Because once I step into that zone, it means that like I'm doing advertising, and although it pays the bills and like it's functional and like it's what everyone is doing as well, but like we are not a media outlet driven by news, and like I'm not covering like latest restaurant openings and stuff. I feel like we like to take things at our own pace, and if we are under like another company or like we have the pressure of like people reading us like every week or that kind of stuff, we are always pressured to put out content, and with that sort of pressure, it doesn't feel like creativity as well as like when we want to do things our own way.
Yep.
And also I want to remain small because it just saves a lot of trouble for us, like logistically and stuff.
Yep.
So it's like, no, I'm not aiming to like put my books at like a commercial bookstore and like have it distributed worldwide. It's like, that's not our goal. Our goal is like, I guess, to be able to reach out to independent businesses. Being independent helps as well, because like, you know your own kind, you know who you are supporting, and people will support you back if they can feel like the genuinity of it all. If you go in with like, I mean, like, I guess you build credibility along the way, but if you go in as like an established person, people will treat you differently.
Interesting.
That's something that I don't really like, because like, I guess they are like the more prominent food blogs and they are invited to like media tastings and stuff. The food will definitely be like more like curated on that day, and they'll make sure like, oh yeah, I better clean the table, keep refilling the person's glass. Like, I mean, I've worked in F&B before lah, so when like the business owner sees like somebody important like coming in, be like, that one from this publication one, like you just smell a bit more, like just act a bit more proper because they're taking photos.
Yep.
You know, when you have like that kind of pressure on you as like, I guess it gives you like a pressure to report things a certain way, especially like if the food isn't very good and like you want to like, you know, this is like an important person in the restaurant industry, then you still need to like sugarcoat things a bit. But I guess as an independent party, I don't really think too far about like things having an implication on like our name or like our businesses, and like we're really here just to have fun. And yeah, that's the mindset of the slow press.
So when you go down and you talk to these owners as the slow press, do they ask you questions about why you're doing this? How is the food going to be presented? Because I think some of them are like home cooks, like home kitchens.
Yeah, because we operate from a very journalistic standpoint. Journalistic being that we pitch our own stories to them, and nobody comes to us with a brief like, oh, I don't even go to people with a brief and say like, oh, I really want to interview them. Like, writers, like our own team, like pitches the idea among the team, and we're like, oh yeah, actually like this thing's pretty cool, like can I go interview this guy? And I'll be like, sure. I mean, if the idea is completely feasible, yes, like go for it. I won't be the one be like, hey, I want to talk to this guy, can you help me do that kind of thing? So it's like out of your own will to talk to these people. So with this motivation in mind, like I guess business owners know that like you're really interested in what they do. And what I try to do is like, I mean, I read up a bit more about them and like I profile them for certain reasons. Like if they're using like their own ingredients from their own garden, then like it's a very special thing. Like I want to like highlight something that is very unique to themselves. And because they know that you have been reading up on them and like you are genuinely interested, and I guess having knowledge of the kitchen and like cooking really helps because sometimes we cook alongside these people and like they expect you to know certain things. If not, it really shows like very badly on yourself. So like with like a mix of these factors, it feels more genuine. And when we talk to people, it's like, oh yeah, actually there are a lot of things that we don't know. We are here to like learn from you. And when they feel that way, they are more comfortable. So they don't feel like they're talking to like a media person. Yeah.
It feels very grounded.
We try to. Because there's really a lot of things that we don't know. And we are a bit embarrassed by that sometimes when we meet people who are really too good. Like
the terminology, or what is it about? Yeah.
Like sometimes we cook with some people and then they're like, oh yeah, you know how to like peel these prawns for me. I look at it, I'm like, what if I peel a bit ugly, or like I miss out on like certain like
the shell
right?
whatever, yeah.
Or like I crack the egg then got shell inside. Then like, wow, I feel very stressed when they were like, oh yeah, I just fried the tempeh, like just say this one, you just go and fry. Then like, can you get the tamarind for me from the fridge? I look at the fridge, I'm like, wait, why is there like just bottles of things? And which one's the tamarind, you know?
Yep.
It's like a bit scary. Like they expect us to have kitchen knowledge and stuff like that. So it's just fun when like you don't know certain things and like people guide you on it and you all learn together.
And it feels like keeping like an open mind with regards to, I guess, what is unexpected as well.
Definitely. Like I think it works two ways. Like you need to know how to like, in order to appreciate food, you need to know how to cook as well. Or like at least you enjoy watching the process of like cooking. Because like if you're just gonna eat, then you don't even know like how the meat is being made. It's a bit like pointless, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Pointless. Interesting. I'm curious to know how your role has changed ever since you started the Slow Press with like your team. How has it changed, or has it changed at all?
It has changed quite a fair bit.
Yeah.
I think the essence of it all has not changed lah. I'm still running most of the day-to-day things. I mean, like, I try to think of like projects that the magazine can work on, the general timelines for the entire year, and like I'm always looking out for like good food content, and like if it's nice, I'll just send it to the group. And also like people that I want to talk to and learn more from, like cool businesses or even like cookbook writers or like magazine people. And that's not limited to food lah, because the print industry has so much to offer. So it's like I'm still doing all the same things. Slow Press is always on my mind. Like I literally cannot switch off from it.
It's a good and bad thing.
It's a good and bad thing because like I still need to manage the Instagram, and even if it's not like replying to like people who message us, it's also like thinking about what we can engage people with. And because I run almost all the social media stuff, so I've been doing that from the start lah, and it's always very natural of me to like look out for content and like a bit of pressure to like create my own. I think something that has changed a bit more is like, I guess I don't really feel the pressure to like have to write or like have to design as much anymore. We have kind of solidified people that we can work with, like at least a stable team of contributors who we really love, and they are super nice, and like we all work hard together. So I think that took us like maybe 2 years to like figure out like who exactly we're looking for, because it's a lot to like explain to people what we do. Because there's also a lot more outside of like the print product, right? Sometimes we need help with people to like do like videos for like certain merchandise that we're doing, and like people to be in our shoots and stuff. They're usually our friends lah, but like it takes a lot for them to understand that we are so much more than a magazine. And at the start I had to do, I mean like our core team had to do a lot of the designing, a lot of the writing, because we were like, we need to like fight for ourselves, and like we need to establish the standards, right? Because we are the ones with this vision, and if we're not the ones starting it and being on the ground interviewing people, then how are people going to trust us? Like we literally have nothing to show, right? So we had to set the precedent and the tone of voice for the Slow Press. So the first maybe like first to third volumes were very important for us. Volume 4 we had a bit more fun, and like it was our thickest volume out of the 4 lah. So I think in volume 5, because we found like a solid family to work with, things got a bit easier on like the writing front, and I didn't have to feel like super pressured about the print side of things, and I could use a bit more headspace running events and like thinking of like collaborations between people. So like content came a bit more naturally when I wanted to do like the wet market thing. It was purely out of like my own enjoyment. It wasn't like, oh, this year's focus is to like talk about markets, talk about hawkers, like let's go. It's never like that. It's always like, oh, I want to start a new series about this. Like I want to interview chefs about their menus. Then I'll just do it lah. Yeah. So that has become a bit more fun and a bit more flexible nowadays.
So I believe you guys just launched volume 5. So what I'm curious to know is, assuming there's going to be a volume 6.
Yes, there will be.
What goes into the thought of, I guess, the conceptualization behind, let's say, a volume? Where does it start? Do you just start like the day after you're launched? Or do you chill a bit first, go and take a break, then you'll restart again. What does that look like?
Okay, so we have like 5 volumes to date. And first, volume 1 to volume 4, we did everything within the span of our first year of launching the Slow Press. So the format was very different.
All within 1 year.
Yes.
That's ridiculous. Okay.
We wanted to be a quarterly publication, and that really tested the limits, and we were like, no way, we're so tired. So we pivoted to a annual publication.
I'm glad you guys pivoted.
In volume 5. So for that whole year, it was very rushed. But I guess what motivated me was like, the more content we have, the lesser lag time we have lah. Because with magazines that publish only one thing a year, there's only so much that they can talk about for the whole year.
Yeah.
And as like a food magazine, we just want to get our name out there because like food is always changing.
Yep.
And the format of volume 1 to 4 was quite different from 5. So 5 is our first thematic volume. So that means that the stories are more evergreen and they are not really like profile interviews and more. I guess volume 1 to 4 is like a bit more short form in the sense that like if something is relevant during that point of publishing, like we did one piece on like Golden Mile Hawker Centre reopening. And that was because like we felt it was timely to talk to the hawkers about like what improved for them and like how are they motivated to like work harder with like the new functions of the hawker centre and stuff. So it was a bit more like time sensitive for us to publish. And that was the goal lah. So volume 5 was more thematic and the curation process was very different as well because we dragged out the timelines a lot. We had a lot more time to do more research, more interviews, and pieces were longer in general as well. Yeah.
Has that experience of switching the gears from 1 to 4 to 5, has it been beneficial?
Definitely. Oh my goodness. Wow. Like I've never felt so tired in the first year that we launched because other than doing magazine stuff, there was also a lot to do. Like because everything was all over the place. We didn't really know what to do for like social media. And like forming the community was hard also. Like finding our own like style and what is our unique selling point, right? Sometimes because we were so small back then, like imagine having like 200 followers and you have to reach out to profiles for your next volume already.
Yes.
And then people are like, oh, like you guys just started lah. Like can show me what you do or not? Then we literally have 5 posts on social media. We're like, our volume haven't launched, but like I can show you after we launch, but like we want to do a story on this and it's kind of like time sensitive, you know? So there's always like a lot of doubt to deal with at the start. But like I guess after 4 volumes and you want to do the 5th one, it's a lot of different factors because people are like expecting a certain standard and it only goes better from here. That's why I always tell my team lah, like we're never going to like produce something lesser than who we are because like we can do this. Like literally everyone on the team is so talented and I believe in them so much. So the experience has only been getting better and also because of more friends that we make along the way and like people are just very supportive if they see like consistency in what you do and they're like, oh, you guys are still not doing like paid stuff. I mean, that's great. I mean, how often do you not see media like doing like ads and stuff, right? So I think for me, I want to keep it that way. And
so I want to touch on this idea of getting better a little bit. What does growth look like for the Slow Press? Would it be doing more issues? Would it be doing a deeper focus on certain things? So I'm just curious to know because you mentioned doing better. Yeah.
There are a lot of things. So there's like internally as a team, what do we want to do? I think for me, since day one, it's always for people to discover what they originally joined Slow Press for. Some people want to do like more photography. Some people just want to be able to write more about food because like at least it gives them a platform and a motivation to do so lah. Because without that, I mean, the most they can do is maybe write a post on their Instagram. You
That's
know?
fair.
Yeah. Although it's not like a huge media outlet, but they know that people reading it know what they are reading. They like food. So like internal growth is very important for each team member, especially for like the core members of the team. I want people to like pitch their own projects and like, dude, just go free with whatever like you want to do. Yeah. But like as a magazine, I feel like growth isn't in terms of like quantity, but it's always about stretching the limits of certain things. Talking about stuff that people don't talk about, especially as like, I guess, belonging to a younger demographic of things. I think giving thought to certain things like processors and like, do you even know that like thosai is made from fermented rice flour? That's why it's like slightly sour. That kind of thing is like, oh, maybe when you go and talk to your friends or like starting conversations on social media is very important for us. So we always try to like talk about our experiences when we cook together. Although now we don't really have a lot of time to cook together.
Yeah.
But I think growth is when people engage with us on social media, and sometimes we see like new people or like existing people that we have always been talking to. They'll respond and be like, oh, this is Thai eggplants. Like when I ask like, what's this vegetable? I've never seen it before, that kind of thing, right? And then people are telling you like which noodle stall to try from the hawker center. You'd be like, oh, like, that's so cute. Like, I don't even know this person, man. Like, mad props to like this person. Like, I guess I really like it when people are like talking to us about food in an organic manner. Yeah. It's not like they are forced to like join a giveaway, then they like comment their favorite dish, you know. It's just like people randomly say, oh yeah, you're going to Vietnam next week, right? Like try this place. Like it's so organic. And for me that's the most fulfilling part of our journey. Yeah.
It sounds like a lovely community and fan base that you're just trying to build up bit by bit.
But I mean, it takes time and a lot of effort. But I think at the heart of it all, it's like staying true to yourself. You don't always have to be like a perfect person, like in terms of like knowing everything. Like literally I get scolded by people before. Like in a friendly way.
Okay. Hopefully,
they're like, because they saw us like make a certain dish last time, they are like, wow, my grandmother will kill me if you add this ingredient, that kind of stuff, right? They're like, whoa, don't be so aggressive lah. Like I also learning, I just follow some Google recipe, bro. Like don't be so defensive. But then in those instances, we feel like people are fighting for what matters to them. And that also brings us joy in a different sense. Like, oh, you actually care about how I make it. You actually watch my stories to the end. And we are all like not perfect people. We are all like learning how to cook also. So I guess that's like the most honest side of us. And always like remembering that we're here to learn and grow with everyone else.
I am curious to know, do you feel the pressure to jump on mediums such as like the video, to do like a TikTok, to stay quote unquote relevant? Do you feel the pressure to do that? Yeah.
There has been a lot of like discussion about this lately with people, because when we go to like art book fest and stuff, they're like, oh yeah, you guys do food, right? You guys do like cooking tutorials, cooking videos. Then we're like, we are publication for long form journalism, and because that's the medium that I'm most comfortable in, and also like that's the best medium to present like research and like writing, of course, paired together with design, photography and everything. It doesn't mean that video doesn't like stand a chance in like what we present, but like I need to work with my own limits, right? As the founder, I am not a videographer by practice, and like it doesn't mean that I don't believe in video. I love video. So many good videos out there, but like that's not our strength lah. Like just put it like very honestly, we should just concentrate on what we are best in and most comfortable in. I wouldn't want my friend to like pick up videography just because it's like, oh, you only can join the slow press or contribute because we're looking for videographers. Like, I don't want to force it into something that's not in our DNA. It's like, if I just like taking random casual IG stories, that's going to be our primary form of reaching out to people.
Fascinating. In viewing your different volumes, I noticed two things that I really want to talk about. What thought and ideation goes into the covers? Because I think for your most recent one, I think it's like a dual cover with the cat and everything. So what was the story behind it? And like what kind of like conversations are you guys having as a team to say, okay, this is going to be the cover because of that. Yeah.
I love the cover discussions because it really just lets our imagination run wild. So, I mean, with reference to like the latest volume first, because the theme was bittersweet, I think we really wanted to do like half bitter, half sweet. And I wanted to do like, if you flip it around, the reading experience is different, but it was way too hard to format and we scared like we'll fuck up the paging and everything. So we just stuck to like dual covers, and pink and green were the two colors we chose from the start because like literally bitter and sweet. And we were like, oh, let's just make something contrasting. And I don't know how the discussion became like, oh, let's use like my friend's cats. So it's quite funny because like, I think because we have seen the cat so many times on like Instagram and stuff, right? Then we were like, dude, this cat is like always grumpy and the other cat is always like happy, and they all live in the same family. I mean, they're all like children or like, crossbreed and stuff, right? Then we were just like, what if we do a shoot with like the cats and the bitter gourd, like the grumpy cats and the bitter gourd and the sweet cat with like the strawberries. And we spent like a month like feeding them, not really feeding them, like observing how they respond to these items and getting them used to like the backdrops that we use for the shoot, because if not they'll like fidget and they won't cooperate. So we had to like do a recce and like see which of the cats suited like the covers the most, because there are like 4 cats in the household.
Yep.
Yeah. So like I think that was very fun because we've never done something like that before. And we wanted something that would just like stand out to people and start a conversation, because a lot of people thought we are a cat magazine. People came up to us at our booths because like they're seeing it for the first time. They're like, oh, are you guys a cat magazine or a pet magazine? I love cats. And we're like, oh, actually we're a food magazine. And we try to explain to them like, it's very interesting how cats perceive like these flavors just like humans. Like we don't like bitter foods. So like, that's the same as us, you know. But it doesn't rule out like everything else that we think about food. Like we might hate bitter food from the start, but it doesn't mean that like that won't change forever.
You can acquire the taste.
Yeah. So that's what we go deep into, and like we write the editor's notes and also through the stories. Yeah.
It feels like a conversation starter. Your covers.
But for volume 1 to 4, the approach was quite different because we didn't have a theme and we didn't want to limit the writers to anything, right? So after all the stories are pitched, we try to see what's the recurring like idea. And it's really like, okay, we're not trying to force things out lah. So the first volume didn't really have a theme. So we just wanted like this man like in a nasi lemak setting, but going through like the sea, like because it's us venturing into the unknown. Yeah. Then the second one, I mean like all of them have food as the main components lah.
Yep.
Second one, the overall idea is kind of like noodles. And we wanted to make like something that looked like a kinfolk cover, but we weaved together like different kinds of Singaporean noodles. And you just made it into like a scarf. Yeah. The third one was like a Humpty Dumpty falling off a wall. Because it was supposed to be a childhood themed-ish kind of volume. And we used like salted egg instead because there's like a local twist to it. And the fourth one was like, it was like the sea and like there's like the crabs, and we used like agar-agar to make like the sea and everything. Yeah.
Sounds like you guys are very hands-on to create a cover, and you guys shoot it yourself.
Yes, we do that in Melody's house without like a proper studio or anything. It's always on her washing machine or on the floor. And we try to like use a bit of artificial lighting and like just post-produce everything. And everything contains food. So actually in volume 4, we did a bonus shoot inside. So we did 4 separate food islands.
I wanted to talk about that. I found that to be amazing.
Yeah, like we really loved the idea because that was supposed to be our anniversary edition. That's why it's also in red and different from the rest. And it's also the thickest one with the most number of recipes. So for that, we did a lot more like chef features and a lot more like family recipes. Also because like that's supposed to sum up like the first format of the slow press. Like we didn't want to do that anymore. We wanted to change to like the theme volume and stuff, right? So for that, we created like the Tiffin Islands. So each Tiffin has a different world of its own and represents the story that comes after it. So we use like real like roasted duck from like the duck store. And like we also use like things like mangoes and like stuffed fruit. Yeah, everything is edible in our covers. Okay, most things. Don't eat like don't try to eat like the clay man or like ice cream sticks.
So was it? So let's say for the Tiffin, like did someone just come out and say, why not we try something like this? And you guys just
right? Oh yeah, I supposed to talk about the process. So usually when we have a call for the covers, like I mean we can't really meet in person all the time lah. So after we have all the stories solidified, like we have the design drafts and we know kind of like the colors that people are using, because we don't have a standardized format for every spread. I don't really want to have a magazine that is like same layout. Like,
from issue to issue even.
Yeah, from page to page even. Yeah, each designer has their own unique style. So like, we'll just gather on the call and then we'll just be like, guys, got any cover ideas or not? Like, childhood as the theme. Then people will be like hopscotch made of candy. Yeah, so that's why we had like the jewelry box made of candy and stuff like that. But for the Tiffin Island one, I have no idea how it came about. Because there was this piece on like Tiffin Bicycle Club. It was an interview with Desmond Shen, like this chef who did this Tiffin project. So I think I suggested like, let's do like different Tiffins. But I think somebody else said like, why don't we make them into like islands that represent like the different stories? I think it's really innovative. And what I'm curious to know is, while reading through the magazine, I find, especially in the most recent issue, your stories, I think, to me, they feel very tender.
and they feel very personal. Is that the intention? Because you mentioned like a change in direction, you wanted to focus on different things. So would this be, let's say, the direction for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, definitely. I think like we want to speak from our personal experience as much as possible, and building on that topic, talk to people who have similar experiences or like just have knowledge about the topic, which is why it's not really like just an interview piece, just an essay. It's like a mix of both, because then you can draw conclusions that relate to like society, and like I think it's just very nice how like people in these different like positions can come together. Like your personal curiosity can stem from yourself. Then after that, maybe you talk to your mother about like how she used to do this.
Yep.
Then you talk to the market vendor and how like her family does this.
Yep.
And like it just builds, and like people are talking about the same thing, but they're all different opinions.
Yep.
And I think that's the direction for like the future, of course.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess like journalism law, just continuing this thread.
I think what I do like about it is like how you focus on not actually the food, but I guess what it means, because what that definition is so subjective. I think one of the recent articles is about, I think, fruits, and I think the symbology of it.
I think it's so cool how my writer could just pitch that. It's like something I'll never associate when you want to do something about like bittersweet, you know. You just think of like, oh, bitter gourd and like candy law. And like maybe dessert recipe, maybe like the most you can do is just like very literal things. But to like think out of the box and like, what does this word mean to you? Or like, what does the flavor of this food mean to you? It can open doors to a lot of different things. Yeah.
Because it's oftentimes, it comes from very personal and, as I said, tender. It's a very like, it's just a very engaging and I think mind-opening read, I would say. So I think my final question to you is, what does food mean to you? And how has that changed from young to now running the slow press? Yeah, what does food mean to you?
Food means everything to me.
Wow. Put it on a t-shirt. Yeah.
I think about food a lot. Like, I feel like I really want to make each meal nice and enjoyable for myself. Sometimes I am not allowed to do so. Like, if I'm sick, or like if somebody else is like, if they're having like a business meeting, you know, I have to eat whatever food the person like asked me to eat, or like catering, or like family meals. It's like already prescribed to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I can't fault anyone if it's a poor food choice, but to me, I really want to make the best food choices for myself. If I get to decide what to eat for my next meal, I make sure that it's something that I'll be happy with lah. So sometimes it goes to like the lengths of like traveling a bit further just to obtain like a better prata. Or like if I'm really craving like a good croissant, I'll literally like take transport out to do so, and not like just settle for one that I might not be very happy with. Food is something that makes me very happy. It's something that brings people together, although it's like people might not appreciate the same dish the same way. Like friends that hate bitter gourd, and I'm like, dude, bitter gourd's amazing. But when they try like the fried bitter gourd at like this banana leaf restaurant, like basically like I think it's like an Indian dish with like deep fried tempura bitter gourd.
Okay.
It's so good, and people are like, no, it's not bitter gourd, it's just like crack. So it's like, I think food changes perceptions on a lot of things. And I guess making a lot of like international friends when we go for art book fairs, we see everyone coming together and they're like, my Japanese friend has never eaten like prata before, and he's so fascinated. He's like, dude, what's this thing? Like, I don't have bread in Japanese cuisine. Like, tell me about it. And we're like, oh, this is just prata lor. But we're seeing things in such a new light when like people are fascinated by food. And like the whole thing about being able to make food for someone is like the labor of love. And like, even if it's not great, like, you know, your friend put in like entire days effort, or like even months to perfect a recipe, and you're like, this is delicious because it's made from the heart. And it's just heartwarming when we can enjoy food together, no matter good or bad. I don't want to see it as something that people have to be too critical about, but like, of course, I want to make the best food decisions for myself lah. Yeah.
And I believe that's a beautiful way to end this episode. Before we end, is there anything else you would like to talk about?
Try to wake up for breakfast, and like, if you have to eat 3 meals a day, just make the most out of it lah. Yeah. Don't shortchange what you deserve when it comes to food.
Fascinating. Where can people find the Slow Press? What do you guys have in 2023?
Right. We are very active on Instagram, or at least I am. So you can just like DM us anytime. We'll definitely be going to the markets a lot, still trying to find people to cook with. And like, we'll still be doing like stuff we are curious about on Instagram. We are working on volume 6 in a bit.
Do you have an idea of what volume 6 will be like? Or is it still
can't
under
really
wraps?
disclose yet.
Okay.
But we are definitely looking for contributors this month or next month. So if you guys are interested, you can always like contact us when we send out like the call and stuff. Yeah. But in the meantime, you can enjoy volume 5. You can pick it up from Neighbor right here.
Right. Neighbor store.
Neighbor store, a Rookie's coffee shop, as well as Bashir graphic books. Yeah.
So before you continue, why these 3 particular stores? Like, what was it about them that, let's say, Rookie's Coffee, like Bashir? How did the conversation start? Like, did you approach them? Do you patron these particular stores?
Right. Bashir is great. Everyone that likes magazines goes there. So like, even international people go there, and like, we don't even need to like introduce the magazine or something. People will just pick it up. They like it. Then like, they can bring it home and read it.
Were they very open to just stalking you guys?
I think they like to support Singapore magazines, definitely. Because, I mean, they bring in so much international stuff, right? But putting local stuff out there is like, Bashir's the best place to do so. Then for Rookies, we had our launch party with them. So it's like natural for us to like just continue selling it there. Because like, I'm friends with the owner as well. So it's very nice. Like we both like support each other. And same for Neighbor lah. Everyone like supports creative things, and I'm very thankful for you guys.
It sounds mega chill. This has been a beautiful time. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode and feel inspired.